We live in a society where there's little time to reflect on our past. We have adopted a sense of not looking up to our history in order to learn from it. It seems like in 2015, the world doesn't need so much knowledge for the past, but invests its time in the future. In our continent, America, we look to be of a very technological and well-established economic society. It wasn't always like this. We shall look at how our continent was managed and acted through the most complex time in the recent history, the 19th century. In order to comprehend in historically this era in this continent, we must separate the topics into South America and the United States of America. One must understand that both subregions are very different from each other. They are different in many ways. One being their independence movements, where the United States fought for independence against the thug British Army in the late 18th century, while the southern countries fought the debilitated forces of Spain and France. Another is their culture, as the United States was more particular to British ways, and the southern countries were ruled in Spanish and French manners. We will first look at the United States movement toward a strong nation in the 19th century.
In the beginning of the 19th century, the US decided to grow as a nation. It seems like not even 20 years had passed since the establishment of a federal republic, and the ideals of liberalism put the use that the newly independent United States decided to expand. The problem was that the territories to the north belonged to England. The territories to the west were too dangerous, and the calm territory of the south belonged to France.
In the Louisiana Purchase, the US established a negotiation with the French where they bought the land France had in exchange for what will now be $200 million. This will also pay off the debt that the Americans had with France because of the help they received. By 1803, the original 13 colonies had grown twice their size. The US faced its first problem as a nation when Great Britain decided to invade the United States in 1812. The US had barely 20 years as a sovereign nation, and there was an old enemy that wished to attack them. The war lasted 2 years, and eventually the Americans defeated the British for a second time. This helped the United States gain the confidence they needed to keep building their country.
It seemed like the goal that was set for a recently successful nation was to establish themselves from coast to coast. The United States believed that it was their destiny to spread their power to the hostile West. From 1840 to 1860, the manifest destiny of the United States was being fulfilled, where the country reached a full growth. This action was heavily criticized since this meant that many Native Americans lost their homes and or lives fighting against the urbanization. The United States had a vast territory, thanks to deals with native tribes and also after defeating the Mexican army in 1848. The United States had a large nation, but slowly became divided over one thought: slavery.
So the US Civil War was caused by disagreements over slavery. The North had industrialized, while the South was still an agricultural economy based on cotton production. For the North, slavery wasn't important because in industry you need educated workers. Slaves are really only best employed in simplistic hard work tasks like agriculture. So for the North, where the capital, Washington, was based, slavery was no longer important. And for a country espousing views on liberty and equality for all men, it was hard to align that with slavery. So for the North to pass laws to end slavery was a threat to the economy of the southern states. So they tried to break away and set up a new country called the Confederacy. From the start, the Confederacy were massively outnumbered, and in hindsight, they never really could have won, which makes it even more tragic to think that it was all so avoidable that what they ended up in the end was only what was suggested in the beginning. All of the United States unified together with no slavery. It led the USA to become an imperial country in so little time. Business interests, of course, in protecting their foreign interests. It was kind of a next step for the United States to take.
This was not the same with Latin America. While the United States was gaining power and territory, the Latin American countries were gaining their independence.
There were many causes of the simultaneous decision by all countries to take part in independence movements. We have to consider the French Revolution, of course, and the ideals that it promoted, basically equality, freedom, fraternity, and also the statement that all human beings are equal, right? So this liberalist ideas influenced that came and that arrived to the universities, to American universities, influenced the educated population of this of the places in America, right? Of the countries over here, the colonies. But the biggest one of all must have been the outcomes of both the American and the Mexican independence movement. The American Independence War was definitely an inspiration. With that, after the French Revolution established the idea of the possibility of becoming emancipated and freed from the oppressive governments, European governments that we had here in the continent.
Where it all started in Latin America was in Haiti. Haiti, as different from the other countries, was a colony from France. The French Revolution and all the problems that were suddenly happening in France was a good opportunity to the Haitians to start a revolt in 1791.
Leading to its independence in 1804. Haiti was the first Latin American country independent. This was one of the most political challenges in history and a significant part of slave abolition.
In Chile, it considered itself proclaimed independent, but it was until 1818 when they officially got their independence. Chile's movement of independence had three stages: Vieja Patria, 1810 to 1814, Monarch Restoration, 1814 to 1817, and Nueva Patria, 1817 to 1823.
Again until 1870, where an army of the Andes defeated the Spanish troops. So in 1818, Chile was officially independent. But it was not the end. Violence continued in the stage called Nueva Patria. With Venezuela, the independence movement was a little more complicated, being that it has four stages.
The first stage was between 1810 to 1812. It was the first independent government of Venezuela. It started in April 19, 1810 with the overthrow of the Spanish colonial authorities. In July 5, 1811, the Declaration of Independence was written. Actually, nowadays, Venezuelan people celebrate this day as their National Independence Day. The stage started with Simón Bolívar organizing a counterattack and reestablishing the Venezuelan Republic. This republic came to an end in 1814 due to a series of defeats at the hands of the realista named José Bous. A lot of battles were continually going.
After 2 more years of war, Venezuela, led by Simón Bolívar, achieved their final independence from Spain. Venezuela, along with Colombia, Panama, and Ecuador, formed part of the Gran Colombia. This was the fourth and final stage, but in 1830, Venezuela got separated from these countries and finally became an independent country.
It all started with one person, King João. In 1808, this person arrived to Brazil, or known back then as the United Kingdom of Portugal. Because of Napoleon conquering Portugal, King João had to return to Portugal in 1821, so he declared that his son, Dom Pedro, led the country. He wanted a separation between Portugal and Brazil, so in 1825 he made the separation and Brazil was independent.
And last but not least is Cuba. Cuba had tried gaining their independence, but they would always fail. But until February 14, 1885, the final independent move started. In 1886, I think one of the least abolition of slavery happened. In 1887, the United States declared war to Spain, and in 1889, Cuba, with the help of the United States, was declared independent, but it was ceded to the United States.
As we can see, the 19th century was mostly revolutionary battles and independent movements all over the continent. The main problematic country was Spain, with the control of a lot of countries in Latin America. These independent movements were very similar in some aspects. Napoleon's invasion was truly one of the main causes of independence in the continent.